Alright folks, just a quick video here talking about Tenavolts Lithium AA batteries. Before we get started, I did want to say that I was contacted by, I believe it's called Nanfu, the company that makes 10-volt batteries, and they asked if they could send me these batteries for testing and evaluation purposes. I like doing reviews, so of course I said yes, and they went and sent them to me. So that means I didn't pay for these batteries, but the opinions are my own. This package includes 4 batteries, a charging cable, and a charging cradle. If you take a look at the back of the package, you'll see things like the output voltage of 1.5 volts. They're AA batteries as mentioned, and 750 milliamps. They have a charging cycle of 1,000 times. Okay, let's quit playing around and get this baby open. Inside, you see the 4 batteries, the charging cradle, and the power cord. Oh, it looks like we have a little bit of an instruction manual in here as well. Now here at the TheSmokinApe channel, we make it a practice not to read instruction manuals, so I'm just going to toss this thing to the side. Here you go, you can see it's just a standard USB cable, so nothing fancy there. So taking a look at the bottom of the charging cradle, you can see that its input is 5 volts at 2 amps. So its charging current is half an amp or 500 milliamps across each bay. Let's go ahead and pop these batteries out and see if we can take a look at them. So here's the battery. It says 2,775 watt hours for a AA battery at 1.5 volts. Remember, we saw that it's 750 milliamps also. The wrap on these batteries looks pretty nice. Taking a look at the battery, I can see a little bit of a ridge at the bottom, and that tells me that there's some kind of control board in there. Some people will call it circuit protection, some people call it a battery management system. Real quick, I want to test these things with the voltmeter and see what we come up with. And it looks like 1.506, and it's pretty consistent across all the batteries. I want to make sure these things are fully charged, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them in the cradle, and then I'm going to connect the cradle to an Anchor power bank and see if I can charge them from that. When I start plugging the batteries in, you can see the green lightning bolt that lets me know that the charging cradle is active. The end of the batteries actually emit a light blue color, and we'll take a look at that. And that lets you know that the batteries are charging. That blue LED turns off once the batteries are finished. I had to disconnect the charger from the Anchor power bank and connect it to an extension cord. And the reason I had to do this is once the batteries were fully charged, I guess the charging cradle itself didn't pull enough energy from the power bank to stay under current or under load, and that green arrow would turn itself off. Anyhow, now that we're done charging, let's go ahead and put these things back on a multimeter and see what we come up with. And you can see 1.52, and that's pretty consistent across all the batteries. Okay, now that the batteries are charged, I actually want to use this Lithium. It's the Li 500. It's a battery charger analyzer. And what it will allow me to do is allow me to decharge or discharge these batteries. And it'll allow me to track how much current came out of these batteries. So let's go ahead and put these in and see what happens. As you can see, it's on charge mode right now, and it says end, which lets me know that they're fully charged. Using the mode button, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch this to what's called a Noor Test, which is a normal test. And as I mentioned, it will top the batteries off and then discharge them slowly. What's odd is that the battery analyzer immediately goes to end. So for whatever reason, this Lithium cannot discharge these batteries. So thinking something might be wrong, I break out the Tenergy battery tester. And this will allow me to test the batteries. It's a rudimentary tester that kind of gives you a low, medium, high. And when I plug this in, you can see that it's all the way up on good. So these batteries appear to the Tenergy charger or tester to be fully charged. Let's put another one in and see what happens. Maybe I better seat it correctly. And here you go, same thing, fully charged. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use this Nikkor flashlight. We're going to put 2 of the batteries in there. We're going to turn the flashlight on and let it set. And this way we can drain the batteries that way. And then once it's done, I want to do another voltage test and see where the batteries are. As you can see, the battery, light the flashlight up. It's around 100 lumens. We're going to set this flashlight right here and come back later. I'm putting it on a cutting board so don't burn my house down. Here we are about an hour later, and you can see the beam intensity hasn't diminished, but the head of the flashlight is around 108 degrees Fahrenheit, letting me know that it's been on for a while and that it is getting a little warm. So it's been about 2 hours. Let's take a look at our flashlight, and you can see that the light is on but very faint. Now one thing that was odd is that this light stayed pretty bright up into the very end when it suddenly died off. But the brightness remained pretty consistent for the entire duration. So let's go ahead and get these batteries out and test them and see what we got. The flashlight's cooled off considerably since the bright light started to dim. And again, we're going to break out the Tenergy charger, and we're going to see what the reading says. So as I plug this in, I'm quite surprised to find out that they say that they are good and fully charged. And I think that has something to do with that BMS or circuit protection that we talked about earlier. It must somehow regulate the battery. Alright, and back to the multimeter once again. Let's test these out. And oh my gosh, look at that, 1.52 volts. But I just drained these batteries all the way with the flashlight, and that one says 1.52 volts. So it's kind of odd, right? Before we used the batteries, they were 1.53 if I remember correctly. Now they're 1.52, and the Tenergy charger is showing them as completely filled. So this got me a little bit curious. I honestly don't know much about these batteries. I was reached out to by Nanfu, as I mentioned, and I said, sure, send them to me. So after this, I'm going to go to the website and take a little bit of a look and see if I can find any information out. So here's where I got the batteries, off of Amazon. And you can see they're about $35 for a package of 4 and the charger. You can buy them in other configurations as well. As I scroll down, I start to find a little bit more information out about the batteries. First off, if you take a look at the top left-hand infographic, you can see the Tenavolts maintain a consistent consistent voltage, while alkalines take a 45-degree slope down. And then you can see some of the other nickel rechargeable batteries. They maintain a current as well, but it's a little bit lower. It's around 1.2, and then they drop off very suddenly. So you can also see that there is a BMS inside the battery, and there's probably a smaller battery housed inside the battery. Then you have the BMS system, then you have the end of the battery, and then you have the LED light that shows that it's charging. So it's a pretty impressive and ingenious configuration, although it's confusing a little bit because the batteries never really seem to die. Anyhow, I'm pretty impressed with these batteries, although they were a little confusing at first. They might not be a good use case for things like smoke detectors that require the battery to die or lessen in voltage so they can tell you when to replace them, but they should work fine for things like remote controls, flashlights, and other household devices. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and a big shout out to Tenavolts. Thanks for sending these batteries over and sponsoring this video. If you like this video and you want to see more content of a similar nature, go ahead and click like and subscribe. Thanks everybody.